I've had a couple of questions, which are good ones, I suppose. I mean, all questions generally form a link in the network of defensiveness, because there is nothing needing to be known in the Christ mind or in the Buddha mind, God mind. Everything's one thing. Communication is instantaneous. So when you get a question, it shows up as a denial of that premise. I've got my winter hat on today. There is snow falling in the highlands just south of here, so I'm getting ready to build a snowman. I don't know if it's going to snow here, but it's certainly extremely cold. I had my Gandhi moment some years ago, where when Gandhi arrived at Heathrow Airport and walked down the steps, one of the reporters at the bottom of the steps that was there to greet him said, "Aren't you cold, Mr. Gandhi?" And they've all got their big coats on and everything. And he said, how can I be cold when I'm always thinking about God? Putting it that everything is a thought, everything is an idea. So in the idea of meditation, which is an idea, I mean, even God is an idea, right? So everything is mind. In the idea of meditation, in the idea of meditation then, we're looking for an idea that has no idea, or the idea without an idea attached, the cause without an effect, put it that way, or the if you were to look at it in a linear kind of way, the very next thought you don't have. That's where your enlightenment lies. In the very next thought you don't have. That's where the holy instant is. In the next thought I don't have. When I leave that gap, when I refuse to fill in the narrative with my blah, 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 blah conceptual analysis. And that's extremely difficult, to leave that gap, because the mind is overtrained to be a constant narrator on life. And you'll notice if you are in fact even doing the workbook lessons of the course, by the time you get to lesson 10 even, I mean there's 365 lessons, but by the time you get to lesson 10, you'll realize how chitty chatty your mind is. It's like, oh my God. And the reason that you don't realize it initially is because there is so much chatter in there that there is no real ability for you to stop and take stock of actually what's going on, until finally you reach this kind of threshold, or this breaking point where you just can't take it anymore. Now, initially that just can't take it anymore shows up out in your world as this job or this relationship or this emptiness or this situation. But what you're actually looking at as the idea of I just can't take this anymore is the futility and the meaningless and the emptiness of a life without God. It's like a bungee rope, and you tie it around your waist and you go running away from the origin point of the rope, and it stretches and it stretches and it stretches until it just won't stretch anymore. But until you reach that place where it just won't stretch anymore, it's not very likely that you're going to give the idea of meditation, real meditation, its dues. And I've heard people like Krishnamurti, I think even both the Krishnamurtis, Yuji and Jiddu, have both said meditation is not required, it's pointless, which is transcendence. I mean, a lot of those Eastern technologies, those Eastern spiritual technologies, are very transcendent when you start to understand that a lot of the perspective they're putting forth is actually bypassing the work. And we hold these figures up as reverent, and not saying they're not great teachers. Absolutely they are. But once you understand that consciousness raises up and that the understanding of the nature of salvation becomes more apparent, those initial forays by our predecessors who attempted to plumb the depths of salvation, let's say back in time, well, they kind of fall away. They fall by the wayside. And I know that there's a lot of people that still cling to those sorts of technologies, the Vedantic path and all that sort of thing, or the Vedic path, because of the historic validity that it has. And at one time, yes, I would have agreed with that. But I remember going through a very devout period, I guess devout, I mean, compared to what, but I remember going through a very devout period with Krishna consciousness, and I would go once a week to the Haridam down the road, which was the biggest one in Australia. I happened to auspiciously be living about 15 minutes from there, so, and the teachings made incredible sense. They were beautiful, and as far as if I was to hold up the teachings of Krishna consciousness next to the teachings of next to the particulars of my own life, stark contrast. Obviously much better, much more potential for a more beautiful life, but still didn't go far enough. I sat there, and even after my awakening, going back to the Haridam, there was almost no resonance whatsoever after that point of illumination. And so you look at the idea that everything is mind. Well, meditation becomes useful because meditation is an action of the mind. How can it not be helpful if it is an action of the mind whose purpose is to bring you to a certain point, to a certain stillness, to a certain stop point where that bungee completely stops. Now, in yesterday's video, I was talking about the here and the now, being present, no past, no future, etc., and how that same principle, that same technology applies into meditation. And when we meditate, it's more a case that we're leaving behind the past and the present and learning to simply be still amongst the maelstrom of thoughts that seem to be prevalent, or perhaps they're not. Maybe you've done some work, but prevalent thought that's going on there. As a discipline, as an action, the action is a discipline. So I choose in my meditation to be still, to breathe, to whatever, to hold my focus on the awareness of that which is just beyond the next thought that I don't have. But to do that, I have to have the next thought that I don't have first. So I'm firstly accepting, and this will be on a proposition until it becomes your reality, until you actually experience it for yourself. I'm firstly accepting that, let's say, even if I use my own example, there's a Dave telling me that something is available to me in the space where I don't have my next thought. Right? Now that's pretty standard. I mean, a lot of spiritual premises sort of focus around that and hubbed around that idea, right? Presented in different ways. I often like the presentation, which is easy to understand for older generations. Anyway, new generations, everything's digital. But in the old days, if you had an 8mm or a 35mm camera, you would have a roll of film, and all of the negatives would be on that roll of film, and you would get the photos developed from that roll of negatives. But between each roll of negatives, there was a little black line. Now, if you were to take that same roll of film and play it at 24 frames per second through a projector, which is how they make movies, or used to, 24 frames per second, the frames are moving so fast on the screen that you don't see the little black line. That's like your mind. Sometimes the projector will jam and you'll see the black lines. It'll slow it down. And now in meditation, there is techniques that can be employed to slow down your thoughts, to focus on a single thought, like a mantra, where you repeat the same thought again and again and again. God is but love, and therefore so am I. God is but love, and therefore so am I. And you repeat that again and again and again, being aware not to allow any extraneous thoughts other than the one you've chosen for your mantra to enter in and distract you from the singular point that you're trying to hold your focus at. Right? Now I say trying in a sense of, you could say determined will is antithetical, right? Because you're attempting in that moment to let go of your own will, and as an idea of free will, which is an illusion, but we won't dally there just for a second, and fall into more, rather than trying, fall into a simple acceptance of what is, rather than trying to make something happen. Can you hear that? Right? I'm simply accepting that there is something, rather than trying to force myself into what I think that something might be through my action of mind. My action of mind is simply acceptance. But it looks like I'm trying to accept initially. I'm trying to accept this thing, or I'm trying to be still, or I'm trying to whatever. Well, you can't try. You can only accept, right? But we have this, or I have this very bad habit of telling myself that, and we can call it procrastination, telling myself I'm trying to do something as if that validates the thing that I'm trying to do, or attempting to do, or wanting to do. I'm trying. And I like in Star Wars, Master Yoda, he says, do or don't do. There is no try. So either be still or don't be still. Either accept this moment exactly as it is, or don't. And that's where mind training comes in. So I have this understanding and this willingness to accept that, yes, there is something available to me in the holy instant. There is something available to me that is going to remind me of my eternal nature and release me a little bit, perhaps, or maybe entirely, from the unfounded belief, which seems to be very founded, that I am this body in time and space. Right? Now you can call that an esoteric experience, a spiritual experience, but you need to have an experience, and that's where I'm directing you towards with this video. So there's an experience available to you. There's something available to you that you already know perfectly well what it is. You've just forgotten, because instead of abiding with what it is and with what you are as that it is, words. You've chosen instead, or I've chosen instead, to listen to the rhetoric of time and space that goes on, blah, 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 in the coconut here, or seems to be in the coconut here, that is a constant distraction. What about this spiritual idea? What about that spiritual idea? Such a such teacher says this, such a such teacher says that. Well, what do you say? I'm not interested in having you tell me what I'm saying. I'm not interested in having you tell me what somebody else says. I want to hear what you say. Let's communicate through the language of the heart. You ready? Now join me there. Join me in this place, in this moment, which is not of time and space at all. And I've had people say to me, well, how do you do that? What's actually going on there when you open your mind like that? I'm like, well, somewhere you already know, because I'm communicating with you, you're just unaware of it. There are those who are in my circle of associations, let's say, who are aware of it. And if you scroll down 20 or 30 videos, you'll find a group of us, of 4 of us, who have practiced our mind training to such a diligent level that when we come together, and we don't even need to come together, I mean, what's communicated is known by anyone who's awake anywhere on the planet. But we've practiced to such a level, such a determination that if we are in proximity with each other, especially in the form association, We recognize mutually through the reaction of the form association, the connection that we have as one mind, where my mind opens to the singular consciousness, their mind opens to the singular consciousness. There ceases to be a me and a them, or a me and a you, or a us and them, and all of a sudden it is just the one I am, and we become like two photons. Me, let's say Dave, and the other person become actually the same person in seemingly different locations, looking seemingly different, with seemingly different identities and things, which is not true. It's the one thing appearing as two, right? That's the whole conundrum of time and space. Quantum physics now is looking at that idea of the quantum realm, the quantum universe, where everything is the one thing, which, I mean, science has been trying to initially disprove the notion of God, and now trying to prove the notion of God. I mean, Sigmund Freud, Stephen Hawking, Albert Einstein, all those sorts of guys, even some modern contemporary kind of quantum physicists are now looking at the idea of God, right? They've even discovered the Higgs boson. I think there's one smaller than that now, but the Higgs boson, which they nicknamed the God particle, the one thing that's in everything. I mean, if science could really understand that they were looking for God, they wouldn't need billions of dollars in funding for their experiments. They would simply they would simply practice the action of being still. Right now, the downstream from being still, actually practicing that action, is in the physical nature, is health, healing, certainty, release from fear, all of that sort of stuff, right? There's a recognition that comes with the realization in the light experience that you have that love and fear don't coexist. And if you learn to abide more with love, like unconditional love, not conditional love as in relative love, which is just a chemical reaction in your brain. Sorry to bust all those romantic bubbles. But if you learn to abide with that, the other thing just falls away. If you learn to be still in your mind, all that chit-chat falls away. It takes a moment. We call it healing, a process, but it takes a moment, and that moment depends entirely upon how much willingness you're putting into it. How determined am I? You have to be totally determined, totally willing, totally open, totally defenseless. Life as you think you know it now gets turned totally on its head. And that's going to be totally terrifying for a moment. And then you'll be totally grateful after you totally hate my guts for a minute for pushing you down the rabbit hole. But that's where you've got to go. I always tell people that you'll hate me before you love me. And that is truth, right? You have to realize you don't want God. All of this puntzing around with, oh God, we're all one. Yay, we're all divine beings, masculine and feminine. It's just a lot of puntzing around. I love that word, puntzing. It's not actually communicating. I was reading a post the other day, and I'll get back to meditation in a second. I just wanted to see if I can pop this out on a plate so you can have a look at it. But we'll put the chips in the bag, I heard the other day somebody said to me. young kid. I was trying to explain something, and he goes, "Can you just put the chips in the bag?" Which means get to the point. That's a new one for me. I'm going to get a t-shirt. Just put the chips in the bag. Just get to the point. It's here and now. Right? Oh, I've lost it now. It doesn't matter anyway. Yeah. So All right, meditation. So we're operating from the premise that in the next thought I don't have, there's an opening, right? If I can slow that roll of film down so that I'm no longer looking at the images and I can see that little black line in between, then I can firstly become aware that actually what I'm looking at is a train of an oddly assorted procession of thoughts going by that are actually one procession of thoughts, but they join. They seem to have this connection point, even though in my mind they seem to be like blah, 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 and there seems to be no break, no end. When I learn to meditate, when I practice slowing my mind down with a mantra, I become aware that one thought stops and another thought begins. Whereas initially they seem to sort of overlap each other in this continuous kind of amorphous sort of dialogue or monologue of gobbledygook. Even spiritual gobbledygook, like everything I'm saying now. You'll find that you swap your, like with the what was I just using that as an analogy? With the idea of when I was going to the Krishna, the Haridam, to take my horrible life, thoughts, experiences, etc., to spiritual ones, right? But the spiritual ones are still gobbledygook. The spiritual ones are representing the framework. My spiritual thinking is simply representing a framework for a jumping off point into the present moment, into the here and the now. Although the mind loves to entertain as a higher level of look at me, right? Those ideas of spirituality. Right? Oh, look at me, I'm a minister of God. Look at me, I'm a Reiki worker. Look at me, I'm a yoga teacher or whatever. I'm a therapist of something. No, you're not. You're a child of God. But that last identity, although all that, just as your old worldly sort of way of looking at things had to go in order for you to become more spiritually attuned and look at spiritual things, that also has to go. It's only a technology, it's only a transitionary tool, a bunch of concepts, a bunch of principles that you apply, and once applied, you no longer need. You just become, it's like Lao Tzu, before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. It's not about being spiritual, although that's a stage most people go through. I went through it. I thought that was the end of the story, and now I just have to do this. But then you realize, well, even that wears out. Even that becomes tiresome. It's like, well, surely there's more than this. And yes, there's more than this. And Jesus says in the course, this course is just a beginning. And at the end of the course, he says, and now forget this course, right? The course, which is the entirety of the universal curriculum, sets you up to a mindset of readiness for what is to come once you've got the basics, right? The course is just the basics, right? Be here now, finger on your nose, no past, no future. I'm totally responsible for the singular nature of the experience that I'm having. Now what? All right, so you're leaving that gap. You're starting to get moments, holy instants. You're starting to have glimpses through the veil, let's say, or into the miracle level of mind that is absolute 100% proof that what Jesus is telling you when he says you are the flesh, you are the spirit, not the flesh, is true. He means what he means. That's that. If you don't understand what he means, it doesn't mean that he's wrong. It means you don't understand. More learning is required. Right? And I often have people trying to break it down for me, what they think Jesus means in the course by a certain thing and a certain thing. And does he mean this? No, he means exactly what he says. If you don't understand what he says, just keep going. Right? It will become clear for you later on down the track, as it became clear for me later on down the track with several of the premises that were presented. You'll get to the point where you realize it's the one thing being presented over and over, which is your sinlessness, your perfection, your wholeness. through many, many different ways. It's sort of like the depths have to be plumbed, or the rabbit hole goes this way and then it goes that way and then it goes that way. The rabbit hole just doesn't go straight down. It's everywhere. It pushes into consciousness in all the dark little corners and illuminates everything. So you're having these moments like that. You're having moments of communion. You're having moments of communication. Just down a tone then. You're having moments of communication, and all of a sudden the witnesses to that internal activity become stronger than, or become incontrovertible. You can't deny it any longer, regarding the nature of the message that you are the spirit, not the flesh, and the outside world seems to impress upon you less. The monologue that goes on in your head has less relevance to you because you're telling yourself, I'm done with listening. This isn't the truth. Something else is happening within me that is opening the way to truth, right? Now, in the Bible, Jesus says, be still and know that I am God, right? It's the same thing as finding the place of no mind in Buddha consciousness, or finding that, I forget what it's called, finding the Godhead in Krishna consciousness. It's a stillness, it's an abeyance of the world, and a simple action of being still, or listening, or feeling. Listening and feeling are the same thing when it comes to this, right? You feel with your heart, right? The decision of the mind is to listen into the silence. But the passion that empowers that decision is of the heart, right? The power and the passion. So that transfers as in your efforts as determination. I'm determined. Let the phone ring. Let the person knock at the door all day long. Whatever it is. My external reality is reflecting the temptation to believe in my internal distraction, that monologue, which will continually try to get in. Because that's the purpose it has. It's like the tide coming in. You're trying to say, no more tide. That's it. I'm done with it, like that. And you draw that circle in the desert, or the tide's probably not a great example, but you're saying no to what seems to be impossible to say no to, because you've known it your whole life. You've had it your whole life. Your whole experience has been based on listening to and interacting with the thoughts in your mind that tell you something about yesterday in order to give you a better idea about tomorrow, and never allow you to be in the truly here and now present, which is now, in this video, we're transferring to our meditative efforts. Right? So in meditation, we learn to be still. Be still and know that I am God. Be still. Breathe. Right? Some of those last lessons in the course, they go for half an hour to an hour. And if you're good with them, Jesus says, practice even longer if you want, right? That inner listening. Now, the mind will always attempt to get you to sort of posture questions, which is like where I started this video about how the nature of all questions is distraction and defense. What am I listening for? How do I know if I'm truly listening? That's still not listening, okay? Don't listen to those voices. Don't listen to that voice that's trying to convince you that that voice is you. It's not. It's a nasty, horrible, suspicious, vicious, cunning, and baffling distortion of your true light resonation. Its only preoccupation, its only purpose, which is the one you gave it, let's say as a computer programmer, you programmed it to distract you from the here and the now, so that the dream can be maintained, even under the guise of the dream of being spiritual. Right? Eventually, all of that has to go. You're not a minister of God. You're not a guru. You're not a Reiki master. You're not a yoga instructor. You're not any of those things. You're a divine being, for want of terrible words. And really, there's no words to describe what you are. You have to experience it for yourself. Now, you can begin that by practicing through the meditative efforts of the Course in Miracles, learning to be still, learning to not fill in that gap, that tiny little gap that exists between your thoughts that you'll find in the next thought you don't have. And that's a matter of practice. And if you don't find yourself practicing, it's because you don't want it. Something else is more valuable to you. And that's okay. Just realize that. Oh, the world is more valuable. Going to work is more valuable, or going to, because it seems credible. And some guy on a video with a red hat telling you that it's not credible and that there's something else on offer. You know, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven and then all else will come to you. What's this guy talking about? It's just another guy on YouTube. But if you look through the comments of my videos, you'll find plenty of others that have that are telling you and telling me and joining with me in the idea that, yes, I've experienced something beyond consciousness. And we're now in this great participation. We're now in this great collaborative venture called salvation, coming together, realizing at last with certain amount of joyousness and hooray, hooray, and gratitude, that things aren't the way we thought they were, and that we're not the crazy one. You know, we're not the black sheep. We're actually the ones that are awakening first, not woke. We're not like Greta Thunberg's and all those other, you know, we're not interested in that. We're awakening. Our minds are awakening to the singular nature of life as an idea of our minds down here, learning to communicate. Yeah, in light, up here, let's say in our higher mind, and there's no way to, I could do the whiteboard maybe, but, and being glad about that. You know, one of the things in the Course says, it will bring you near enough to heaven. Your forgiveness will bring, and this is all through forgiveness of conceptual association. Right? Temporal association, conceptual association is the same thing. It'll bring me near enough to heaven that the love of God can reach down to me and raise me up to him. It's like two magnets. You bring them close enough together and the poles align and boom, eventually it reaches that point and boom, it just lifts you, it just snaps together or God lifts you up to him. Right? It just happens automatically. But you've got to be on the ballpark. You've got to be playing ball. You can't be sitting in the bleachers, in the stands, looking at the game. You've got to be active. If you want to hit a home run, you've got to be on the field. You know, and that means practicing. Practice, practice, practice. Salvation is a game. You've got to practice the game. The game, in our case, is prayer, meditation, and the application of all the principles that go along with our spiritual determination. And that'll be fun once you sort of, you know, it's like any game. Once you understand the rules, that's good. You understand the rules, you can have a place on the team, that's good. Once you're on the team, you'll get more and more practice and better and better and better until eventually you're hitting homers all the time. Hooray! And we'll all be back at the clubhouse having a cold beer. Thank God for that, or a chocolate milkshake if you're under 18. All right, I love you guys, and thank you. We've had a few new people showing up in the Zooms, which is great. If you do want a real kick in the pants, which is love, it's all love, everything's love, right? Sometimes the lessons of love look like tough love, and sometimes they're just little light bulb moments. You go, oh, isn't that beautiful? But whatever it looks like, I tend to, you know, Tyna and I have this funny sort of running joke that our Zoom meetings are like boot camp. There's a movie, I think it was Officer and a Gentleman, where Richard Gere, and he's doing the crunches like this, and the drill sergeant is like 10 more or something like that, and he can't do it. And the drill sergeant's like, right, you're out. You're not going to make it in the Marines or whatever he's trying to get. And he goes, I've got to make it. I got nowhere else to go. And you have to reach that place in your mind where you've got nowhere else to go. Jesus has to be your, you know, or salvation, not even Jesus, salvation, like atonement, has to be your one thing. Right? The ego always says, once you solve all the problems of the world, then you'll have peace, which is bullshit. You'll never do that because everything's always changing. But the Spirit says, once you resonate with me, all those other things won't be a problem. Right? And that's where we're looking to flip everything over to. All right, one moment at a time, this moment. I love you. I do. I love you. I wasn't doubting that for a second. Also, thank you. Like and subscribe if you like these videos. Some people tell me they're helpful, and I'm very glad to be helpful. I'm only here to be helpful. Check out the links down below. Deb and Tina put all the links and everything down below that you'll need if you need a little book, wherever it is. Hang on. Whoop. If you need one of these, which is an introduction to A Course in Miracles, we'll mail you one out. I did a mail out Monday, so a bunch of you guys should be getting those within the next few days. And the link for that is down below. If you need a copy of the white edition of the Course or the sparkly edition of the Course in Miracles in its entirety, Book A and Book B, you'll find the print-on-demand links down below there. And all sorts of stuff, all sorts of good stuff. Be about it. Do your study, practice your lessons, read your book, and follow the instructions. Every lesson has an instruction. That's all really I can, more than that. But and keep watching these videos. I mean, everything you do that seems to you to nurture the nature of your transformative process, the nature of your healing process, the healing of your mind, that believes it's separate from God, everything that you can do to nurture that is good. Everything that's just pointless and circular and everything out there, until your mind training has sort of matured, you won't realize that there's even a purpose to that, and it will be kind of distracting, very distracting. So for now, it's always better. I always tell people, like, try to use your spare time or whatever you have, or put time aside to do your lessons. Make sure, and Jesus even says in the Course, if you can't find time during the day, ask me to help you rearrange time so that you can do your lessons. And I remember having to ask him that at one stage, and I found myself with plenty of time on my hands, and I immediately filled it up by going to the beach, going swimming, completely forgetting that I'd asked for help with being able to find time to do everything I needed to do. So it's a matter of a constant abiding with the Holy Spirit, abiding with love, abiding with the presence of God within yourself, and remembering that that's what you're doing, All right, that's enough. Peace.